Lately, I've been getting asked a lot, what's the proper order to connect the water to your RV? Because we have the pressure regulator, we have the filter, we have a hose. What order do we put those in to do it properly? There is a right way and a wrong way, but first we need to find out what is your equipment and what is your situation. That'll tell us how to do it right. Now, you might think it's strange to ask what's your equipment and what is your situation when you're just connecting up water to your RV. There's got to be a simple answer. I'll give you two simple solutions on how to hook this up that's going to work just about every single time. But there are situations like in the summertime, if you have a RV park that has really high pressure and you connect in your pressure regulator, you connect in your filter and your hose, everything is going to be protected. But if you try and do that in the wintertime and all this stuff is left outside unprotected, that's where you can run into problems, and you'd want to know what your situations and your solutions are for your equipment. So there are ways to be able to connect up wrong depending on the situation. I'm also going to give you some tips today, a higher flow inside the RV, ways to set your pressure regulator, and the way that we kind of prefer to usually set up our water. Because there are 6 different ways that you can connect up this equipment, and actually more than that if you want to talk about the auxiliary waters, like being able to connect up the black tank flush to your water system to be able to flush that out. That adds a whole nother set of variables. So the combinations that we have are filter, regulator, hose, filter, hose, regulator, regulator, filter, hose, regulator, hose, filter, hose, regulator, filter, hose, filter, regulator. If you don't want to hear all of the options, let me give you the easy option where you're going to be safe every time in warm weather. That's where you do your pressure regulator onto the hose bib, then you do your filter, and then you do your hose into the RV. Now we can get into some preferences, but if you do that, you put your pressure regulator on the hose bib, you're not gonna go wrong having something burst. Everything is gonna be protected at that point. And if you're in the cold situation where it's gonna be freezing at night, as long as you have a heated hose, our heated hose is rated at 200 PSI, then you go to your pressure regulator and then your filter and into the RV, you're going to be safe every time doing it that way. But there's other preferences of why you might want a different order. So let's look at a few of those. So a lot of people like to hook up their filter first. So this is going to be if you're not at a high pressure park. So we were at a place that had well over 110 PSI, and they said, do not connect up this water filter to it because it will burst. You have to have a metal pressure regulator, and then you can connect your equipment to that. So we had to connect this first. But if you're at a park that has 60 PSI, this can handle 60 PSI. So you connect this right into the source. What that is going to do is that's going to give you the maximum amount of pressure going through this to give you the maximum amount of flow to your RV, and then you can have your pressure regulator and your hose after that. You might ask why still use a pressure regulator in that situation? Because there are places where it may not appear like it has high pressure, or it doesn't typically have high pressure. There might be a problem, water gets turned back on, high pressure comes in, and the pipes are broken inside your RV. So always using a pressure regulator is the way that I go. Now, situations where you're putting the regulator first. So this is if it's warm weather and you're at a park that has high pressure. So you put this on first, and then it's going to protect your hose and your filter after that, one of the first scenarios that we talked about. But again, that's going to be for warm weather. And then really after that, you can change up which direction you want to go with the hose first or the filter first. If you put the hose first and then the filter, you're saying that you want to filter the water that's in the hose. So in case you had it out, you were setting up, some dirt got in there, it has to go through this filter before it gets into the RV. If you wanted to make sure that there was only filtered water inside your hose, you could put filter first and then the hose going to the RV. So really preference at that point. I got a little quick tip for you. You may never have thought of this before, but it's always a good idea to turn on the water before you connect it to the RV coming through the hose, because you don't know if dirt did get in there. I've even heard of people having bugs crawl inside there or lizards go inside. So just a quick blast of letting that water go out before you connect it to the RV is a great idea. It takes just a second, and it's also when usually the most amount of sediment coming from your supply is going to be expelled. So why not do it? Okay, now here's one that we've used before, and it's hose, regulator, filter, and then into the RV. Usually when that happens, we aren't using this hose, we're using a heated hose, because we've been to an RV park that had 110 PSI and it was freezing cold. It didn't get above freezing for 3 days in a row. So you had to have a heated hose if you wanted to be connected. And this is where it's important to know your equipment. If you know the different PSI ratings on your equipment, like our hose was rated at 200 PSI, we had no problem connecting the hose to it because we did not want our regulator sitting outside and it would freeze. So that way we went hose, regulator, filter, and into the RV. It worked for the cold weather situation. Now, one little simple tool that I keep on hand to be able to know the pressure at the park that helped me make the informed decision of how I want to set things up is I use this really simple pressure gauge. It's just a pressure gauge to know what it is at that park. You might say that I have a pressure gauge on my pressure regulator, and yes, you do, but that's going to tell you the pressure that's coming after you have regulated it. So it doesn't tell you the park pressure. And I don't want to have to go and adjust this every time to find out what the park pressure is. So I just keep this really simple gauge on hand. Plug this in, turn on the water, and it lets you know what the pressure is at the park. I don't do that every time, but I do test the water pressure at the park if I'm noticing that water flow is low or I want to see where it's at for the park. I also use this to confirm that I'm setting the pressure on my pressure regulator because these do tend to break on a lot of the pressure regulators, the adjustable ones out there. This one hasn't failed me, but I've had other ones in the past fail. Doesn't mean the pressure regulator is not working because I can confirm with this that it is, but the gauge is something that I like to double check. So I'll put a link down in the description to everything that we're talking about in this video today. And this video is sponsored by Taste Pure. So this water filter that we have here, it's the #1 RV water filter in America. So a lot of people are using this. That's why I'm using it in this setup. They've made some new improvements to the 6-stage filtration that it has. It's made in the USA and it's just plainly simple to use to filter the water coming into your RV. You can see why it's popular. I think this one brings it down to 20 microns. We've had other water filters that have taken it down to 1 micron, but we didn't like the way that it reduced the flow. We like having a little bit higher flow into the RV. And as far as our drinking water, we have an RO system on there, so we know exactly how we're treating it, what the standards are that we're treating it to, and to add some minerals back in. So we're not worried about taking too many minerals out so that we know that we always have a trusted source of water. Water tastes great everywhere we go all the time. It's always consistently good water. Now, a tip on setting the pressure regulator is I like to dial it down. So I'll set the pressure really low on the pressure regulator, and then I will bring it up to where I want it. Oftentimes, pressure regulators are sent out at 40 PSI, and a lot of people run the ones that aren't adjustable at 40 PSI, but I usually range between 40 to 55. We usually range around that 55, but if you're worried about some of the flexible tubing that you have inside your RV, not the PEX. PEX is really strong. Around 40 PSI, it should help you in that situation. But I like these because I usually get a higher flow out of these than I do the ones that are already preset. That brings us to another little tip that I have for you, and it's this adapter. So when you're talking about having kind of auxiliary water, say you needed to spray something off, or this is how we connect in to be able to use our black tank flush, I like this Y adapter without the shutoff already directly on there, because if you look at the shutoff, we go with a 5/8 hose to have good flow, and then we put it through this tiny little shutoff on a two-way splitter. But if you get this one that doesn't have shutoffs, you can see how much more flow you get on that side, and that's the side that we put the RV on. And then on the other side, we'll have the shutoff so we can turn a hose on and off. So you might have a lot of options of how you would want to set yours up, but the easiest way to remember if you don't want to have to think about it, and the safest way to do it, is you put in your pressure regulator, you put in your filter, and then your hose for warm environments. If you're in the cold, know what your pressure is, connect up your hose, pressure regulator, filter, and then into the RV. Those are kind of the ways that we look at it. So I think that's going to do it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it helped you out in some way. So as always, if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will see you next video. Take care.